Good morning, good morning. Here we are in the second now ESSEC Knowledge Google Hangout. This is Global Entrepreneurship Week, and so our objective here is really to inspire, to talk about obstacles and opportunities with a panel of experts. So we're here with a panel of experts and experienced entrepreneurs who are here to share with us. So don't hesitate, if you're online, ask your questions. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll get to as many questions as we can. So first, just let me introduce everyone who's participating today. So here, joining us from Singapore is Arijit Chatterjee, an assistant professor in management. My name is Sarah Brown. I'm editor of ESSEC Knowledge. This is Fabrice Caveretta, assistant professor in management from Paris. Joining us also from Paris is Hamid Bouchiki, professor in management and academic director of ESSEC Ventures. Joining us from Beijing is Matthew Davy, a founder and CEO of Devisé and an ESSEC alum. Joining us from Paris is Perrine Bismuth.
Good morning.
Good morning. Associate Director of Deuxième Maison and also an ESSEC alum. And joining us from Paris is Sven Lang, Chairman and CEO of I'm afraid to pronounce it wrong.
Waikiki. It's a
Thank you.
investment company.
Waikiki Investment. Thank you. So, to get things started, I think it's safe to say that in the last 10 years, a lot has changed for entrepreneurs. So how has technological innovation and intensifying globalization really changed the game today? Who would like to take this?
Guys.
Hamid?
Oh, I would love to share the burden of the answer with my other colleagues. What I would like to say is that indeed there are waves, there are entrepreneurial waves that are enabled by technological innovation, globalization, deregulation, and so on and so forth. But I think that we should not we should not believe that there are times, certain times that are ripe for entrepreneurship, and other or normal times where there's nothing much to do, right? So I think I would say that entrepreneurial opportunities have always existed, will always exist. Maybe they're more enabled at some particular eras or periods of time than others, but the message is there's always going to be something there to be done.
I wanted to ask a question specifically to Sven. So in terms of technological innovation, you are a very experienced entrepreneur who's launched several businesses, and a lot of these have been focused on and mobile business. Do you feel like
Yeah, I mean, what's very interesting with this new world is the fact that you can launch a business with a couple of 100,000 euros, and I mean, before that, launching an e-commerce company or a mobile application company will take you a million. So the cost of development has drastically reduced. So I think this is accelerating the level of innovation and duplication of business models also, because you see a lot of clonification of business models happening in the marketplace from local entrepreneurs.
I have a related question actually from one of our Google Plus followers. And they ask, is it a good idea for a non-technical founder to, so someone without a programming background, to start an internet startup?
I think yes, of course. The most important thing is to to be always looking at great ideas and how to adapt those ideas in the marketplace where you are. But what's very important is to surround yourself with key developers, or I mean, this is very difficult because these are the resources that are lacking in this industry, and so I think before launching a company, you need to make sure you have like a couple of geeks, I would say, around you which are some of your founding teams, you know, and they can brainstorm with you about the technology development.
So we've touched on how new technology is helping young entrepreneurs get started with less capital, sort of confronting this issue of crisis, let's say. But not only that, startup businesses have traditionally thrived in a recession. There's a few examples of big companies who've really gotten started in a difficult situation. So is now a good time, can we ask?
Sarah?
Yes.
So, I mean, on the good time and also on the way the innovation style are impacting this globalization, it usually comes to mind everything going on around the internet, but it's interesting to know that there is a current wave around hardware, which is really fascinating, which is planned to be as big as the internet has been for the last 20 years. And the idea is all these new solutions where you can do 3D printing, you can do robotic system with open source hardware solution. For instance, something called Arduino, which is a platform which is fully open source, and therefore, and just to give you a scenario to understand what that means for globalization and fluidity in the marketplace, nowadays kids in the suburbs anywhere in Croatia can start playing with a little piece of hardware and all the software stack to drive that hardware, which is a little controller, and have all the little robotics elements, and can print in 3D the envelope of that object, which could do things, move around, have a camera, being an alarm system, be a toy, be anything you can imagine. All of that being open source, all of that you can produce and test in your flat in any suburb around the world. And once you've done that and that thing works, and there are no problem of license, because again, this is hardware open source, you can literally ship that design to a fab in Taiwan, and the fab in Taiwan would produce it, because again, this is a platform which is open source, so those guys in Taiwan are, the ecosystem exists now to do that, and the fab in Taiwan would produce the object, shrink wrap, and ship it to Amazon in the US, so your product can be on sale. So you could have a teenage boy producing objects in Croatia, getting it produced in Taiwan, and being sourced from Amazon US in ways which are as simple as writing Linux code, because it's literally, there is very little investment or processing systems to put in place. Everything is there nowadays. It just happened that, and that's why I wanted to give the example, that in the hardware, people still don't know that this is becoming possible. 20 years ago, it was not possible. If you wanted to do robotics, you had to buy very expensive equipment, and everything was under license, private license, so producing the object was blocked. No way you could do it. So this is going to be another wave, which will obviously be very global.
Anyone want to add to Ajit?
Yeah, so I think after hearing out other speakers, it seems to me that one big change that has happened is the opening up of India and China. So which has actually added 2.5 billion people in the market. So both supply side and demand side. It's a huge change in how business happens. So it's not just high tech, but also across the spectrum. So you can sell French cheese in India, where people in general have no idea how to distinguish different kinds of cheese, but you'll still find a small percentage, which is actually a large number of people who are willing to pay for French cheese. So this is, I think, a significant change overall. Although I agree that the height of globalization is a bit exaggerated. Most of the trade happens within regions, but still, I think the opening up of India and China is a big uh, phenomenon.
Are emerging
Yeah.
economies then becoming better, presenting more opportunities then for entrepreneurs?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. I thought, Mathieu,
Yeah.
so you chose to launch your business in China. What's your story?
My story was I was studying in Peking University with a dual degree with ESSEC, and I basically I did an Excel plus and minus starting a business in France or in China, and finally I chose France. The reason being the cost will be lower. One point, but the second point is that I thought that for myself, if I fail, even if I fail, I would have won something. I would have won to learn more about China, to learn the language, and so on. So it was like minimizing the risk for me to start a business outside France, because I would get something from it. About what we discussed just before about technological changes, that we can start a business with very few resources. That actually is a bet from Y Combinator, where they can put like $50,000 in a company just to develop a product, and then with the social networks, they try. The go-to-market is very easy; doesn't cost a lot. So that's what also some people bet on in China. And you see some VC or angel investors and funding some companies in China. Most of them are Chinese. We have been funded by Kima Ventures, which is a fund created by Xavier Niel and Jeremy Berebi. And they typically put around $100,000 in companies at a very, very early stage, as soon as you have some sales. So it's yeah, it's easy to start with low capital now because the go-to-market is easy. But one thing is that when we talk about globalization, when I look at China, I am with a client currently introducing baby food in China. It's so complicated. You need licenses. The accounting is different. So I think globalization, yeah, we exchange a lot, but we have still a lot of barriers, and the world is not that flat. So just to tell you my point of view from China. Yeah.
I have some comments about funding a company in France, because I'm currently fundraising for two incubation that is happening into the fund that I manage. And basically, we decided to launch one in France, and for the second one we are thinking of launching it in the UK, because basically we are seeing all the capital of Europe being managed by UK investors later on. There is a lot of capital in England right now that is looking for targets. And there is very few good entrepreneurs in England. There is a lot of good entrepreneurs in England, sorry, but there is all the English funds are looking at France to deploy their capital. But the problem they have is like they have difficulties to deal with French administration, French legal systems, etc. So that restrains the capital to be deployed in France. So I would, as an advice for young entrepreneurs who want to launch their own startups, I would say go to England. It's 2 hours away from Gare du Nord, and you have access to lots of capital there. And when you talk with VC investors in France, they are very depressed, because of the fact that lots of asset management companies don't want to invest in VC in France. There is this new rule of 75% of taxes for the partners of the funds. So lots of teams want to go and move to London. So I think for the sake of finding money to finance your innovation, you're better off to be in London.
Yeah. Anyone else have any comments about funding? About Perrine, maybe?
I think you have other kind of funding solution which are emerging now in France, like equity fund. You know, if you assess the social impact of your business, you have access to other kind of funds, and maybe France is not the right country to raise a lot of money, but for social business, for social entrepreneurship, for citizen engaged new business, you have lots of funding solution emerging, and especially I know about an equity fund called Citizen Capital. And they're not only taking into account economic performance, but also manager engagement. Like if you have employee participation in your capital, if your place to work is a great place to work, and lots of criteria, and I think that's a good trend for funding in France, to take into account this kind of criteria, and this fits young entrepreneurs' emerging motivation to give meaning to their jobs. I see lots of young entrepreneurs who start up a business not only to get richer and richer, but also to give meaning to their job, because they can't find this kind of jobs in big companies actually.
And I think that's another trend that we're seeing, is this more and more social entrepreneurship. And so that's something that's being encouraged by the French government, let's say.
Yeah, and you can raise funds for this kind of business in France today, I think.
Yeah, I don't want to be against the French government. I don't want to cancel motivation of entrepreneurs to launch their business in France. There is a lot of business angels and wealthy individuals that are looking for startups in France to invest 200, 300,000 euros to help the companies. But I'm seeing, if you really want to have access to larger rounds, later on you have to go to London, because this is where the money is.
Amir?
Yeah, I would just like to follow on what Sven and Perrine are saying, basically about the French environment. I would like, and in this I would very much be in line with Sven. Anyone who is following this talk should think European, should think of Europe as one big single market, right? We know that, for instance, in the United States, for tax purposes, some entrepreneurs prefer to incorporate their company in Delaware, right? Because Delaware has some friendly tax system. But you operate, your market is everywhere. Your market can be in California, it can be in New York, but you are incorporating legally your company in Delaware for tax purposes, or for in Europe, for example. I agree with Sven. The money is in the UK, but the money is not from the UK. The money is actually coming from all over the world, including from continental Europe, and feeding those those UK funds. And if it takes incorporating in the UK to kind of provide some assurance to your investors, so be it. But your market would still be, perhaps 80% of your market will be in France and or Germany. So I think we have in Europe now, we have to also internalize the idea that Europe is a big single market, and that entrepreneurs do not have to do everything within the same country. And this is, I think, also the value, perhaps, that the value of doing stuff in Europe, right?
Any other comments on that?
About seeing Europe as a market, I remember Xavier Niel, so the founder and general manager of or CEO of Free, was a conference. I think it was Le Web, and it was a conference or another conference. But you had entrepreneurs from the US, and what he said, the problem he had in France is that it was a not big enough market. So he would like to go to all Europe, but it's different languages, it's different laws. So he couldn't expand. But his business is very specific. It's telecoms, it's very regulated, and so on. So I'm not sure we can see Europe as a market. But on the other hand, Fabrice Grindard, who started Auckland, and I've been in contact with him, and what he says is that you have to start your website in different languages, and you don't know in which country is going to work. And Auckland, which was founded in Nice in southern France, worked in Spain and Italy. Yeah, so you don't know. You have to learn different languages, but that means more costs, that means more operations, and so on. No?
Not a big deal. I mean, those are transaction costs. When you have a viable business model, you really have a market opportunity, you have a viable business model. Those transaction costs, I mean, look, Matthew, you're in Asia, and other people. Who are the people who approach Europe as a market? Those are the guys from Asia and from America. They see Europe as a market. And we in Europe tend to continue to see Europe as a set of 27 different countries. I have now, I see young entrepreneurs, creating companies, and from the outset thinking European, but you have maybe for practical purposes, you have to start somewhere. You start in France, or you start in Spain, or you start in Germany. But if someone who starts in France with Europe as the target would not approach the venture in the same way that as someone who starts in France with France as being the ultimate destination. So I think we have to. I'm not sort of de-emphasizing here or denying that that Europe is not the perfect single market that you can see, for example, in the US. But we are not too far from that. And if those barriers will not be removed until until a generational cohort of European entrepreneurs will try to cross them and lower them.
Just a point. So I think Hamid talks about the destination, the market, but if you look at the data, the supply of new firms within Europe, there's a huge variance. So I'm looking at the data from Lithuania. The number of new firms that come out of Lithuania, the number of new firms that come out of Italy, it's a huge difference. I think in Lithuania the number of new firms are about 19% compared to Italy, where it is close to 4% only. So Europe might be a single market, but the source of these new firms are, I think there's a story there. Where do they come from?
But you probably have the same situation in the United States. If you look at the
right.
Of, we only talk. We talk about the Silicon Valley, right?
Yes.
Who talks about Missouri?
Or Wyoming.
Or Wyoming. So the thing is whether entrepreneurs are. I mean, personally, I would feel very happy if the new members of the European Union are supplying a new cohort of entrepreneurs who would take over or take advantage of opportunities of the single market. I wouldn't worry much if there's less supply of entrepreneurs.
Yes, just wanted to emphasize that I'm not about being happy or unhappy, but just say that this is a trend. That's all. Yeah.
But what about the trend? I mean, there is a definite draw to emerging economies. And some say the West, in a certain sense, is losing the battle for talent. Can we say? Is this true to a certain extent?
Is a question to me, Sarah?
Yes.
Okay, so well, I took a long story short, and I've been hearing this for some time. And well, if you look at the data again, you see that actually it's Africa which has been losing the war for, if it's a war at all. We have the war on cancer, the war on everything, right? So Africa has been losing on this war for a long time, right? I think more than so let me look at the data quickly. I think more than 80% of some African countries have their graduates working in OECD countries. So it's not only just about rich countries, but I think poor countries kind of have lost the if there is a battle at all for talent. Especially, I think, Africa and the Caribbean countries in particular.
Yes, Fabrice.
I mean, I think the entrepreneurship phenomena shouldn't be only viewed as a perfect market story, because I mean, even though I appreciate the argument that yeah, there are some areas where the barriers are going down and more things can be done across borders, but we should remember that it has been studied like that by quite a few scholars, that entrepreneurship is most often the result of a collective phenomena, very grounded. So there are a few industries which can go across, and the example by Sven telling us about Fabrice Grinda, he's doing an auction on the internet. Okay, there is no physical movement of things, there is the internet. So probably this is a very particular case if you think about it, because if you're doing restaurant or if you're doing any kind of things physical, quite frankly, the physicality, the environment is playing a big role. And I think we shouldn't be losing too much view of that thing. And so I'm back to your question, the question that you're asking now about the talent. It's the same for the talent. The talent is also embedded. So I don't think anyone can say to any graduate of a Western business school that it would be so easy to go to China. I'm not saying it's impossible, but you know, it will take you a lot of things to understand, a lot of embeddedness, finding a new social network, etc. It is very tricky. So I don't view the markets as being so much like, whoo, everything will move this direction, and then whoo, everything will move that direction, because this is where the opportunity is. There is some of it. I think we should always retain the idea that there's another phenomena, which is the old economic principle, you know, the Pareto principle. Each economy has got their things they do well and they can produce efficiently. And in that game, you know, Western countries still have some interesting play to do, but they do have some plays which would be stupid to do. So when I'm in my classroom, I tell my student guys, listen, if you want to compete with Chinese manufacturer on cost, yeah, sure, don't do it in France. Now, if you want to do a media play, a luxury play, food industry play, etc., quite frankly, starting in France is pretty nice, you know, because you got a lot of talent, you do have a great sophistication, and once you establish your firm in many of those industries here, well, then you can move abroad and you can start expanding. So we should really nuance, and I don't buy the story nowadays that any of my student classroom has to go to China. I really think that if they do that, a lot of them are going to be really damaged. They better think twice before they do it. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying be nuanced about which industry, what is the value added, what you're actually doing. So in IT play, for instance, for sure it's somewhat easier to raise big rounds in London or in the US. But I did live in the US 20 years ago. I'm still in touch with the Valley a lot. I see a lot of good entrepreneurs. They start up in Paris. Why? Because we do have good engineers. Now, they're not perfect. Our engineers are not perfect. But they are pretty cheap. If you go to Valley and try to do your development in the Valley, good luck, okay? It is very damaging to do your development in the Valley. And for French, just show up in the Valley and say, I'm going to do a round, I've got good ideas. Many people get damaged. And they don't talk about that because failure, you know, people, A, assume that they're against the grain once they realize they made a mistake. B, they take it as a personal failure and therefore they don't claim. So no one will hear about the stories of people going to Valley or to London saying, oh yeah, I'm going to do things in London. And they get damaged because London is tough for a French person if you don't know the market. It's a very ruthless market. So I'll be nuanced about these like no barrier, open market, big movements. Okay, it's a way more subtle and grounded phenomenon.
On that note, I have another question from a viewer, and he asks, how long should you persevere on a business model? So if you don't see he calls it hockey stick in terms of growth within the first few months. When is it time to pivot? Perrine, do you want to?
Yeah, I would say just one word. I think the main quality of an entrepreneur is to change his business along the road. You know, you have an idea in mind when you start your business, and then you listen to the market, you listen to your customer, you listen to your suppliers, you listen to your employees, and you change your business. And I would say it's the only way to have a long-lasting business, because if you stick to your initial model, I have seen lots of young entrepreneurs who have stick to their to their initial business model, and they're not here anymore because if you don't conform to the market and you don't listen to the market and you don't change your business model, I don't think it's a good way to start your business. So it's kind of I think it's kind of humility posture in any way if you start your business. So you have to change.
If I may just push Perrine a little bit here and ask her to share personal experience.
Actually, I started my own business when I was a student at ESSEC, so I know Amit Bushiki quite well. And my initial idea was to launch a game to prevent cigarettes for young people, for 8 to 12 kids, to 12-year-old kids. And now I'm running a sustainability consulting agency. So it's quite a change with the same partners, with the same team. So actually, we lived during 3 years on the game editing model, and then if we haven't changed the model, we just have closed the door, and it was the end of the adventures. And we realized that selling our expertise to big companies to communicate on sustainability was a good way to develop our business, because the money was there. The money was not among consumers, so the money was there. And it has been 4 years that we were running consulting companies on sustainability. So we are not editing games anymore. But it was fun.
Yeah.
And Sven, in your business, you've changed focus before.
Yeah, no, I think I was just reading the book called Venture Capitalist at Work. It's a fairly good book on the being a venture capitalist, and it's interestingly speaking, they were saying that 1 pivot on 10 is successful. So basically, you have nine failure amount on pivoting, and the deadline for a company to decide if they should pivot or not. I mean, the clock is the cash. So if you don't have any, like 6 months ahead of you of cash, you should not think about pivoting before, and maybe trying to raise more money to pivot. But this is, again, the chance of success. You have to have it in mind that you have only 10% of businesses that succeed in pivoting. So it's fairly dangerous.
And Matthew?
Well, 10% is higher than the chance of success of a startup. So that means your experience you get from the first failure makes you gives you more chance to succeed. But we pivoted. We started a gift box business like Smartbox in China, and we sold, but many to companies. It was very difficult. We pivoted to a consulting business. So it seems to be good to pivot to consulting. And indeed, cash was a reason. At one point, we realized that we couldn't make it with Chinese companies, so we worked a lot with foreign companies to sell gifts to them. And what's the point to be in China and to sell mainly to EADS, Société Générale, and so on? So we decided to pivot to another business. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think to close up, if anyone wanted to give comments on the importance of having a business school background is it important for an
Maybe
entrepreneur?
I can just quickly give a quick few comments. First of all, that don't believe what I'm saying, because professors, if they could start a business, but if you can, you do. If you cannot, you teach, right? But anyway, so I think the business school education, it trains you to be probably a well-behaved employee, So that's my take on it, and improve shareholder value. Now, and also with the rise in cost of education, the main worry that students have right after finishing their education is, well, I have to pay off my loans now, right? So I think if you can take care of that, then maybe if somebody has an interest in starting their own business, it's a good place to form teams, because nothing happens without a team nowadays, and it's a good place to find out who you can work with.
Anyone else? Closing remarks?
I totally agree. The fact that to be able to start to find your co-founders and to be able to brainstorm some key ideas. I mean, you have time while you're a student, and to read a lot and meet with key these players in order to analyze a business model. To come back on the question on should we start or not without like an IT person, I think you, as a team of co-founder, and what I'm trying to do actually is to establish a link with a school called EPITech, and there are very good engineering school in France, but EPITech has been one of the leading in coding, and so by the way, for the ones who are in France, there is the EPITech innovation projects, where all the students are showing their memo, what they have done for getting their diploma, and they are teams of students. It's 10 students. So I think the ESSEC people should go there, or the students, like the business school people, should hang around the coding school to look for their co-founders and get there the results, because this is key to share with those IT guys. And it's by the way, sorry, but the forum is this week, so it's Friday and Saturday. So for all the students who want to come to EPITech this Friday or this Saturday, they'll be welcome, and actually I'll be hanging around. So and I have some ideas, so I'm looking for some teams.
Yeah, I totally agree. It would be good when we are at ESSEC to meet with coders. I met with coders in Beijing, and that's very useful. EPITech has a school in Beijing as well. Superinfo has a school as well. So and yeah, it's even more affordable here for the same price. And for business schools, it's good to meet with people. It's good also to build a network. I couldn't have the investment from Kima Ventures if I wouldn't have been an ESSEC. So to fund the company can be useful as well. Yeah. One more thing is to manage the finance as well. I used the knowledge I could have get to plan the cash flow, to do evaluation, to do business plan, to show to the investor. That's basic. Yeah.
I would add, I totally agree. One of the key assets of business school is network, because I found my first customer as a communication agency thanks to ESSEC network. And now that I am in the 30s, all my friends from ESSEC have decisionary in big companies, so they can advise my prestation in their company. So it's very useful, and I found advisor at the beginning, because when you start up your company and you're a student, you need lots of advice, because we want for finance, for fundraising, for distribution, because initially it was a B2C company, so I wasn't an expert of distribution negotiation, for instance. And that was very the network is key when you start up your business.